So I'm John. I've been I've been like around TVGS for like a really long time. I graduated from RIT in 2015 and kind of just came right here and just started like working on a bunch of really weird projects. SlapFriends was the big one where that got into GDC and Indiecade. Actually Indiecade this year, which was pretty fun. So one of the things, I'm like, for the most part, since I graduated RIT, like I've mostly been using Unity. And when I think there was like, I think this got like selected as a talk for like Unreal 4, and it's like, you know, I kind of want to learn Unreal 4. I'll learn it enough to tell people about it. So that's how I ended up here. So I'm a beginner enough that like I can teach other people like what you can do in it, and there's some really cool stuff you can do in it. But I'm still learning like a lot of the more grander systems in it. So to kind of give like a really brief overview of like what Unreal Engine actually is, it's a 3D game engine it's probably one of the like most commonly used into like greater industry. They've in the last, well, I guess basically since with Unreal 4, they've made a push for the indie scene because Unity had taken over that market. But for the most part, like they've been mostly working in the like grander industry. So like these are old games that were made with Unreal. Mass Effect and Life is Strange were Unreal 3, and then Street Fighter 5 and Kingdom Hearts 3 are Unreal 4. But for the most part, like it's a game engine, you know, it's mostly designed for just having really nice visual effects and detailed environments and having these big grand like games that you put together. And they're mostly designed for like larger industry teams, so like teams of like, you know, 300 or so. And it gives them like a set of tools to like quickly create like all the assets and everything that they want to do. So it's a little bit different Unity in a lot of regards, which is what we'll go over real quick. Unreal mostly is focused on being easy to like create assets in, and Unity is mostly designed for just to be as like generic as possible, at least from like my experience. So like when you're deciding on like what engine you should use for a project, like, you know, kind of it's what do you want to like work on more, because end result, like you can get the same game with like either Unity or Unreal. Unity, you're going to have to work a lot more to get to the visuals that Unreal has like out of the box, but it is a lot easier to do like gameplay prototyping, and you can make like, you know, whatever you need to make. Unity is pretty open to like just integrate like whatever tools or systems or anything you want in it. So it's a lot easier for programmers. Unreal is a lot easier for designers and artists because most of the tools are designed to just create like a ton of assets. It's kind of easy to, I mean, it's kind of the same level of difficulty to get something like prototyped in there gameplay wise, but it's kind of, I mean, I guess it's kind of like a hard thing to say like it's as easy as Unity to get started coding in it. Like we'll kind of get into like some of the weirder bits of it, but for the most part, like, I mean, Unreal is just going to have like a lot more tools to get started with a lot of cool things. So I mean, it's kind of just a little comparison. So I mean, for this lesson tonight, like I'm mostly going to be showing off a lot of stuff. Like we'll be walking through you know, some tutorial stuff, but I'm kind of showing you like this is like most of the assets we're using. Actually, real quick, actually, yeah, never mind. There's only like 2 textures that I've put up on our Google Drive that you have to download, but I mean, it's 2 textures. One thing to actually download, actually, let me finish this slide and then getting a little bit ahead of myself, all right. No, there we go. So, wait, what is it doing? There we go. I mean, basically, like it's just going to be, the lesson tonight is intended to like kind of help you get used to learning in Unreal and finding your way around. Like they offer a a lot of tutorials in Engine already, and there's a lot of like really good tutorials online to get started with stuff, and a lot of that stuff is how is taught me like what I'm going to be teaching tonight. But like if you're just starting out, like it's really intimidating to get into, because like we'll see as soon as we open it up. So I mean, like I was kind of covering here, like there's better ways to do the stuff I'll be showing tonight, but tonight is kind of just quick and dirty prototyping, and kind of just like the simplest way to get to point A to point B with a lot of things. And I mean, feel free to ask any questions, like interrupt me. I mean, like if I'm getting excited about something or getting nervous about something, I'll probably talk a lot faster. So feel free to like say, you know, I don't get this bit, like can you slow down or go over it again. And that's kind of my little introduction. So I will send this link out when we actually get to that. Like I said, it's like 2 textures, but if you could go to this link and just download them. Let me make sure. Okay, so making sure OBS is still working. So while we're waiting for that, also grabbing the animation starter pack from the marketplace is a good idea. So we'll get right into it. This is the Epic Games Launcher. This is like what you have to do to get through to Unreal. And if you go to the marketplace, it's gonna take a second. If you just type in like animation starter pack, you can add it to cart and download it, and like I already did it, it's down here, but let's launch it. There's some plugins where you have to install it to the engine, and then there's some assets where you just like add them to the project after you've created it, and we're going to be starting from scratch. If anyone needs a link again while this is loading. And let me know if you can't get access into that, because I'm pretty sure I made it open, but I'm not entirely sure. And VR is going to open. So I guess a word of warning, there is a VR mode in the editor. So like you can actually use Unreal Editor to like edit your maps and create assets and stuff, like with a VR headset with touch controllers. Or, I mean, just VR controllers. That does mean that like every time I open it, it's going to open some VR asset things. So that's not going to go away anytime soon. So this is the project browser. These are like a couple test saves kind of mocking up. But what we're going to do first off is go to new project. And actually, before I get too much further, I also want to say, like, if anyone's following along on Twitch, feel free to ask questions in chat. There is a 30-second delay, so it'll probably be like a couple it'll be 30 seconds before we actually like see it, and you'll see it. But feel free to ask in chat, and if someone's watching, they will relay those questions to me. So this is a new project page. So just a really quick thing, Unreal does most of their coding, or you are able to do standard like C++ coding with Unreal, but for the most part, like the engine is designed around using blueprints, which if you're familiar with like Construct 2 or I guess RenPy even, it's kind of like a wrapper for what? Oh, whoops. All right. Give me 1 second. There we go. Oh, so. Oh, well. I don't think. All right. All right. Well, let me keep going. So this is the editor for those who are. That's the launcher. So we want to look at new projects, and what we're going to be building off of is a blueprint version of the first-person template project. So, I mean, I really like these template projects because they kind of give you a lot of functionality right off the gate to like start prototyping with. Like, to get from like, a blank project to this is probably be a lesson in and of itself, but with this, like we actually have like some decent functionality already, and we can start like experimenting with a few things. But like I was saying, like blueprints are kind of a visual wrapper for C++ code. Like it's kind of like your own choice if you want to like, you know, a few years ago, like, you know, coding in Unreal 4 was like kind of wonky, but now it's pretty nice. When you're starting out, I would definitely recommend like use blueprints for a little bit to kind of get used to it. And then when you're like comfortable enough, just, you know, if you're more comfortable using like regular code, you know, try your hand at that. So we're going to do the first person project, publishing to desktop console. All these settings, by the way, like you can change like later on. So starter content, we want starter content, which is like a few little assets and things. Maximum quality is pretty much what we want. And that is, so that's a folder. It'll build a project to, and let's say TVGS lesson live. So let's create that. And that's going to be another minute. So make sure everything's, oh, and there's VR again. So there we go. So this is the editor screen on Unreal. If you have used Unity before, like this looks somewhat familiar, but there's like a lot of stuff going on right now. So to kind of get your way around, you can like right click in the like this screen right here to like kind of look around and use WASD to just navigate a little. But for right now, let's just like hit play just to see. So play is like just runs the game. So this is oh, whoops. Dismiss that because I don't. Oh, there it goes. So this is what you're starting out with. Is you just have like you have this like gun that's shooting these weird little tennis ball things. You have cubes. You can launch all over the place. You can jump. Don't think there's any crouching, but that's kind of about all you have functionality-wise. So you may notice, like, you know, there's a lot of, like, so this is like your player character right now, which is, since it's first person, it's basically a camera with two arms. So that's kind of like fun little thing. One thing is kind of interesting, like, especially if you're coming from Unity, is like how detailed stuff in the editor already is. Because in Unity, like a camera is just literally a 2D image of a camera. And Unreal, they go all out with this like weird little like visual model. This doesn't show up like when we hit play. It's kind of cool. So I mean, so let's look around like the editor a little bit. So over here is basically like a bunch of like really simple tools, now also you'll probably see this a ton. This is like when you open like a new panel with like some shaders or something, it's going to start compiling things. So, but these are basically like just like some standard like asset creation tools. So this is placing objects. So you can type in, let's say, cube. You can dump a cube in there, which has kind of nothing to it. Lighting needs to be rebuilt. So that's just like a solid cube with like no physics or anything to it. So that's like a, you know, when you create assets and stuff, like you can put them up like up here, and yeah, like they'll show up here, and you could just like do some quick searching, like say cube. That's not the cube I wanted, but whatever. So down here is the content browser in this little panel here. So this is like all the files of your project. It's still compiling shaders, so it's blocking some of my views. So right here is like just a folder structure of like where everything is. So we have our starter content, all the textures and meshes and stuff are in there. we have first person BP, which stands for blueprints. So these are the objects that are like coded from the game or for the game. So this is like first person character. So you can have two of them, and that's going to cause some issues. And then over here is the hierarchy of like just all the objects in this game world right now. So we click on the floor, it highlights the floor there, and then we have like an inspector. I'm also using Unity terms, but whatever. So we have the details down here where we can like edit various things on it. So this floor is like pretty flat basically. But I mean, you're able to like, go through, add, change any variables you need to. And then you can also add you can add new components, add blueprints and stuff. So what are blueprints basically? Blueprints are, actually, what's a good blueprint to look at first? So, I mean, basically how Unreal handles game objects is you can create a blueprint. So like if you right click in this area, like basic asset, basically everything kind of uses a blueprint in some capacity. You use like different types of blueprint. Like a blueprint basically is like just like I said, it's like the code of an object. But it kind of differs a little bit. Like in Unity, when you create a new game object, like it's just a game object where it's basically just a transform. So it just has like location, rotation, and scale. And in Unreal, when you create a blueprint, like it has all these like features onto it. So like the floor, for instance, like it doesn't have a blueprint added to it, but like you can actually set like a blueprint to have like a certain mesh, a certain material, certain physics. So like there's kind of like this whole hierarchy of things you can attach to a blueprint to create your game object. So like if we went here, right click on blueprint class, we have like these common classes here. So like we have an actor, which is basically like an object that's just there. We have a pawn, which has like some controls on it already, but it's designed for like a system like AI or something to control it. We have a character, which is actually no, I got some now. Some of this terminology is kind of weird because there's pawns control. If you right click in the content browser and just click blueprint class. So I'm kind of just showing like what you can create with it, because we'll create something in a little bit. But these are like kind of just like the generic structures for things. So I mean, player controller is like a blueprint that's controlled by the player with like input. Characters, like it can walk around and things. So yeah. So we're in first person. So if you go to, I don't know where, I think it starts here from default. But if you go into content, first person, BP, and blueprints, the first thing we're going to look at is the first person character. This is going to open up a new window where you'll see, this is, I forget what this is. This is called something. Like older tools kind of have like different names, but I'm still trying to remember which ones are which. But pretty much this is like the blueprint for the first person character. This is how most blueprints look. You have a viewport, which this shows like what the what components are visually attached to the object. You can like select things. So this is the mesh of I guess nothing. Whoops, change that. So that's the first person. So like from here you can like select, you can see like visual representation of all the objects attached to this character. So we have like these 3 tabs up here. Actually, let me undo. Whoops. Undoing and redoing stuff. It's kind of a little bit weird with this. So right here is the construction script. So this is something that when you get like more into a project, like you'll probably use a lot more of. These are basically, so this is what actual scripting looks like in Unreal. Actually, this will be a better representation of that. So this is all the code that's given to you in a default first-person character. So like there's stuff. So basically, like there's stuff like this is an event module that's set. So like whenever there's an input action for jump, it says like if the jump button is pressed, then you set the character to jump. If it's released, you tell it to stop jumping. So this is what I was saying is like these templates are really nice because they give you like all this functionality right out of the gate, and you can kind of like look through and reverse engineer stuff a little bit. I think it's also really cool is that with the first person stuff, it actually gives you like so many like different controls already. Like I mean, it already gives you like VR capability. I think you can do some touch control, like if you have a mobile device or something, you can output to that as well. So there's like basically like every system out there, you can already like make a prototype on that real quick. So I mean, but this is what I was saying, like this is what a blueprint kind of looks like. It's kind of just modules connected to one another that fire off events and actions and things like that. So one of the first things. So I started with this because what we're going to do is add a variable. So actually, why is it? Oh. So actually, real quick, before I get into actually working on something, one of the most basic things in Unreal you should do a lot is compile and save. So whenever you make like any changes to like any sort of asset or anything at all, you usually have to compile. So this basically like it just compiles it and it'll give you like results like usually just say successful, but if there's like any warnings or errors, it'll pop up that way. So this way like you can compile something and make sure like it'll function. And you always want to like get in the habit of saving all the time, because when you exit out of this, actually, so we'll go into this. Let's add I'm just going to add a variable. It's just like an example. So like if I close out of this, like you'll notice that this asset has this little asterisk on it, which normally would not be blocked by the giant tooltip. But the asterisk means that this asset is like the changes to this asset have been applied, and when you run the game, like they'll be in there, but it isn't saved. So if you went to like go to close this, hopefully a warning will pop up and say, hey, do you want to save these like assets? So usually what you can do is if you forget to like, if you're in an editor and you forget to save, if you close out of it, like you can right click on the asset, click on save, or you can also go to file and then save all, and I'll just save everything in the project. But it is a really good habit to just get into like, compiling and saving just like all the time. Unless there's like something you did that you're not sure is going to be like very stable and you want to just make sure you can reverse it quickly. So right here, so let me delete that. So we're going to add a variable to the first person character, because right now it has a bunch of variables which are mostly designed for like mobility and just movement, but there's no like actual gameplay anything on it right now. So if you click on variable, it'll create like a variable right here. So it's just kind of like by default it's going to be a Boolean, which is just a true false thing. It just says like true or false, but let's call this score. So this is going to be the score of the player, and then you can select variable type to integer, which are basically like whole numbers. So we want to compile because it won't actually let us see the value of that. So there we go. So we have this default value of 0, and that's pretty much what we want right now. So one thing is, I think we want this. So this little button right here is to make a variable public or private. So this is just like this little eyeball. So when it's open like this, it's public, and other blueprints and assets, and basically like if you get a reference to the first person character, like you can access this variable. So I think we want it open for right now. We may want it changed later. I mean, it's kind of, it's sometimes a good idea to just like leave stuff private if it's just like something internal, like gun offset, for instance, is a vector, so that's just like a location of where the gun is on the mesh. But like no other asset really needs that info, so we'll leave it public right now. So right now we have this like little variable right here that'll say, you know, we can edit that later. Actually, I'm trying to think what the best order to do this is. So let's do something real quick. So actually, we're going to make a event here that'll let us let other objects, when they call the first person or get reference to first person character, they'll have access to an event that'll let them increase the score by a tiny little amount. So this is how we'll start coding. So if you right click, you get this like basically a list of like every action that you can do. So like, I mean, basically like these are like what these little squares are, is just a module. So let's say add custom event, and yeah, we'll call this increase, whoops, score small. So this is just a, this is like the start of like just a little event that will, end result will just like increase the score by a tiny little amount. So it's just like, so it's something that we'll be able to call, like I said, it's like we'll call it on other assets and blueprints, so that, you know, we don't have to like keep telling, having the same code over and over in other assets for this. So, so we'll drag a wire off of this arrow, and try to remember the best order to do this in. So let's say set score. So like if you type, so when you create like a variable, like it'll show up here right away. So what we basically said is, this is like a little module is saying like, you know, we'll change the score to this variable. But basically what's going to do is set the score to 0 right now, which we kind of don't want. We want it to like actually increase a little bit. So we'll go off of this. So you can drag right off of this. So this is like an input that basically says like, this is, we can drag stuff off of this and do some calculations here and say like, this is the actual result we want. So integer, so yeah, we're looking for integer. They do not name these nicely sometimes. There we go. So we're looking for integer plus integer, which basically just takes two integers and adds them together. So we'll take score. So you can also drag score right in, and then you can say get score, set score. So get score just gets a reference to score. So right now, so basically like whenever score is changed, we'll get that there. But we can drag this right into this module. Actually, what can we say? So we can actually right click, actually no, don't want to do that. So we can change that integer. So right here we could just like edit it right there. So we just say 5. So every time that this event is called now, it will set score, it'll just add 5 to the score. And I think that might be it. So let's compile. But right now it's not going to do anything because we just made this like little thing, and it's not really going to, I mean, there's nothing calling it right now. So what we'll do is we'll close out of this, make sure it's saved. Let's look at first person projectile. So first person projectile is the actual like bullet that was firing out of the gun before. So it's just like this little orb here. Well, let's look at, so we'll go to the event graph here. So the code that's on here already is basically saying whenever the object hits something, it will give it a little, whenever it hits an object, it's going to check to see if that object has physics enabled on it, which means that like, you know, those cubes we were seeing before have physics enabled because they can move around based on the physics engine. So pretty much this code say like whenever if an object has physics on it, just give it a little push, like you actually shot it with something. So so that's like this little code here, but this actually is kind of good because we now have a condition already. So like we can add a little bit onto this at the end here. So like kind of go through what's happening. So we have the event hit, it branches. So branch is kind of like a true false statement. So there's like a condition here. So it's checking, does this object we hit simulate physics? If it's true, it adds the impulse. It gets like the data from the current data from the projectile, inputs it into this function here, and then it destroys it, destroys the projectile. So, but right off of this, we can drag and look for cast to first person character. So this is basically changing the object type to the for this module anyway, for like the first person character. So it's going to look for a reference to the player object, but we actually need to set that object first. So let's say get first person. There's like a few ways to do, actually that is not the right way. Get player character. There you go. So there's a few ways we can do this, but this basically just says like get player character. It just looks for like a player character instance in the game world. If you have more than one player, like for instance, if you had like multiplayer component, or if you had like co-op or multiplayer or something, you may have to do some extra work. That's what it means like player index here, but for the most part, like we just can get away with saying that. But so now we have this like reference to the first person character, and then right off of that, we'll execute, drag a wire, say increase score small. And that was the event we created later or earlier. And now we have the first person character object reference. And actually, yeah, we need to drag this. So this is the output of, this is the actual reference we're getting. We want to drag that onto there. So now the input is saying like whenever, after you finish like all this code and destroy the actor, then get a reference to the first person character and increase the score based on how we set it. So let's make sure this compiles, and saves, and let's actually, wait, what's first person character 2? Oh, that's why. So let's look for, if you look for default, in details here, you can also say, you could just type in whatever variable you want here, say score. So this way we can actually see, actually, or it just disappeared. Let's fire this a whole bunch. I think Shift F1. If you hit F8, you can detach. So like it'll keep the game running, but you'll be able to like actually access the editor. So let's scroll down here. So you can see like our score went up a bunch because they just shot like a cube a couple hundred times basically. So, but we kind of it would be a lot easier if we have visual representation for that. So why don't we go to content here, and let's make a new folder, call it, you can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to call it TVGS. Oh, it does not like spaces, so underscore is better. TVGS lesson. So this is where we'll create like our own assets. So we right click. So what we're going to add is we're going to add a little bit of a UI to it, so that it'll actually, that we input the score into, so we'll have like visual representation of, we'll see something on screen so we can see what our score is instead of having to go through the editor. So we right click, we go to user interface, and then widget blueprint. Let's let's just call this score widget. I think I spelled that fine. So double click on that, and this is this is the actual like physical blueprint. Well, this is not the blueprint. This is the designer for it. So this is where we can actually like drag objects in and start positioning things around. So let's drag in a text block. So we have the palette over here. There's like a bunch of like UI assets. So we'll have this be the, let me look for it. So if you go to appearance, if we want to look for font, there we go. So we change the size to 96. Actually, no, that is really big. Let's change that to 48. So this is just going to be like a little label saying this is a score. Change that a little bit. There's not really a reason to like kind of position it super accurately since we're just prototyping really, but I like doing that. So let's say 75. So now we have this like little text thing that'll show in the upper corner. We click, make sure we have that clicked. We can Control C and Control V, or yeah, there's Control V. It's weird sometimes. So now we have like a second instance of that text. We do want to make sure it is lined up with our text. And it looks fine. So this will be the actual numerical score. So that's what we have right now. It's just like, it just says score 000. But how do we change that? So we actually go to content here, click on bind, create binding, and this creates this little, so this basically creates like this little function that we can set to do like whatever we want. So in this case, we wanted to update the, take the score from the player reference and then update it. So we're going to do a little bit of the casting we did earlier. So cast to first person character, get player character. So say off of this get So get score off of here. Oh, there we go. So off of that, we want to say get, whoops. So off of this, as first-person character, we drag a wire off and look for get score. So I could do that again since that was kind of a little confusing. So get score. Oh, well, that made a second one. We don't want that. So this is like just a variable score, and we can drag that to return value, and it'll automatically create this converter, which is kind of nice. So right now we just have this really simple function that just gets a reference. It gets a reference of player character, gets a score, and then returns that to the node. So actually, whoops, we don't want that. So let's compile and save. Actually, there's one more step we have to do before we get any further. Go to blueprints, first person character. Let's drag off of event play. So event play is like what happens, this is basically like the first thing that happens whenever the character is existent in the game. So we drag off event play. We're going to look for sequence. There we go. So what sequence is basically just like a little module that just says like, you know, it just executes things in a sequence. So right now, I mean, it's a really easy way to like just have like things happen like one after the other. you know, when you don't want to like delete a modules. Like for instance, like event begin play, you can only have one instance of that in the blueprint. So instead of like having to delete all this code, we'll just say a sequence. So this actually, all this stuff is just like purely for VR controls. So it's not anything that we're actually going to use tonight, but it'll just be an easy practice to get into so you don't like mess up something later on. So right now we just have the sequence set, so it'll execute this stuff first, which I'll be really quick, and then we'll say, we'll drag off of then one, look for create widget. So this will create an instance of a widget, and we have score widget right here. So this creates the object, and then the next thing we have to do is add to Viewport. And we drag it to that, and that's all we have to do, hopefully. We'll see if this works. Oh, there we go. And when that goes away. Very, very, very basic UI. And there's a lot more stuff you can do with it. But that's kind of like a really easy way to get something working there. But one thing I'm kind of noticing is like how, I mean, we're just shooting these like little tennis ball things. So why don't we try doing something a little fun to kind of spruce it up a little. So let's click on first person projectile. Let's go to the viewport. So something that might be cool is to maybe try and get make this like a laser bolt instead of a little ping pong ball. And that is actually really easy to do. So there's actually a couple things we have to do first off. So if you were creating this we're going to be creating this from this asset, just so we already have like something to build off of. It is pretty easy to make your own projectile. I mean, basically you just create an actor and dropping it in. But since most of the work was done for us already, like it kind of makes a little sense to just like repurpose it for our use. So, so on the component we have, on the object itself, we have like 3 components. We have a collision component, which is just a collider. We have a mesh, which is just this little sphere thing. And we have the projectile info. So the collision is just, this is like what actually will interact with other physics objects in the world. So this is like the hitbox, basically. This mesh, however, doesn't have any, so for a projectile, you don't want like any collision on it because like it's just meant to be, you know, something that gets destroyed immediately. So you can just have it pass through stuff. So, and then the projectile is like a component. So if you went to, clicked on add component, say look for projectile movement, that's what that is. I mean, that's what that component is, but this is actually like stuff built into Unreal. Since Unreal was originally designed for a first-person shooter game, like this is just basically like a bunch of code saying this is what we know what a bullet is, here's settings to like just create something. So since we're going to make a laser bolt, we probably don't want it to act like a ping pong ball. So we don't want it like bouncing off of stuff or just like falling for whatever reason. So we're going to adjust a few things on it. So we'll say, we'll increase the initial speed to 5,000 and change the max speed down to 0, which reduces it to 0. 0 means no limit, basically. So now we have like a bolt that's a little bit faster. Gravity, there we go. So we'll set the gravity to 0 because we don't want laser bolts to fall. And then we'll also deselect bounce. And I think that's it on this component. So basically now, actually let's compile, save, and see how that looks. So now the bullets are just shooting straight forward. You are noticing that they're kind of really sticky right now. That's because there's a delay. Just like that. So there's actually a delay on the collision component somewhere. Or is it the sphere? Somewhere on here, there's an actual death delay or something on it, where basically it tells the component to say, like, you know, when it's created, destroy itself after like 3 seconds or so. And that's usually like as much time as it takes to like bounce off of a wall. So I need to find out where that is. So this is where this comes in handy. We start just looking through, and if anyone finds it before I do, feel free to call it out. Maybe under advanced. We're looking for something that's like on destroy. Something like that. Anyway, this is fun. It's one of those things where it's like I'm so used to like how Unity does everything that like maybe it is collision. Nope. I'm used to how Unity like names all their conventional stuff, so like it's kind of hard for me to like think of things in other ways. Or, you know, like basic components are named differently. So let's look at collision. Well, why don't we get back to that? Or maybe, wait, is that navigation, transform? All right, well, why don't we change something a little bit real quick though? So we have this, so let's go back to the event graph. We have this we have this like branch right here, which is designed so like when it hits a physics object, it'll do a bunch of things. But we have this like false, I forget what these called. This like this false output, which isn't connected to anything. So we can actually say, as soon as it hits something, destroy actor, target self. So basically, like if it hits any object that isn't a physics object, it'll destroy immediately. So this may get around stuff right away. There it goes. All right, so to actually get around the delay nicely. So now let's actually make this a really cool laser bolt. Oh, make sure to save that. So we'll take this sphere right here, and let's, if you hit R, there we go. So you have to select in the viewport, hit R. Let's stretch it out a little bit. If R, E, and W control like this is like position, rotation, and scale of things. This is a kind of nice way to just quickly move some stuff around, but we got some sort of like a weird laser bolt shape. You can also go here and over and transform over here and like adjust stuff a little bit manually, which I'm going to do because I want to make things a little bit smaller than the tools will let me. There we go. So now we have this like little bolt shape. We also make sure compile and save. But it's still, I mean, it looks like now we just have this like weird little breadstick thing instead of like actual laser. So why don't we exit out of this, go to content, TVGS lesson, right click, we'll make a new material. Call this laser mat. Double click on this. So this is a material blueprint. So this is like a, so it's basically like what settings you can like input it, you can give it a texture, and you can change like a bunch of things on it to like make it look you know, a certain way in your game engine. For this, we're actually not even going to need a texture. We can just use pure color. So let's drag off of emissive color, and let's say, nope, it is something color. Actually, before we do that, let's go to additive and unlit. So this kind of change the lighting a little bit just to make it a little bit more laser-like. Color. Right. One of these colors. Actually, give me 1 second. This is where I'm going to look into my old this is another weird thing where it's like it's not actually like all I'm trying to do is like just get like a color module, but for whatever reason they decided color is not the actually vertex color. There we go. Yeah, so this count. Is that it? Yeah. So all right. So we're looking for vertex color here. So this is just like a pure color, and nope, it is not letting me edit that. Let's see if that other instancing go up. Up, there we go. So this is our other. So this is like what I was working on before. So this is, well, I mean, kind of spoiler, but this is what. Can I find out what type this is at all? Look for view documentation parameter. All right, vector parameter. So that's what I was saying. Like, it's really weird naming conventions for most of this. So, all right, so let's delete vertex color. Vector parameter is what we actually want, and all that is like actual little color sheet. So let's have this like a little blue color. So this is like our color picker. You can already see like it's got this like nice little translucidity to it. But let's actually add multiply. So, and off of this, we'll look for glow. No, wait, emitter. I can definitely spell tonight. Look for, I really wish there was an easier way to scalar parameter. All right, there we go. So I apologize for that little detour. So let's look for scalar parameter. And this is kind of just like this little effect we'll add that actually increase the intensity of that low glow we had going. So let's say about 25. Take a second for it to compile. And there we go. So we have this like nice little like glow effect. Let's go and name this base vector color, just so I remember later on. So for this, we just have to save and apply. Actually, I think save will just apply at the same time. So we can exit out of this. Let's go into wherever we just had laser projectile, which was blueprints, first print projectile, back to viewport. Click on that, first person material. Let's look for laser. Oh, there we go. And yeah, now we have this like actual cool little laser bolt thing. So let's go to, actually like to make sure that is that's compiled. Let's make sure that's saved. And then let's click on this. Now we have this like little laser bolt. Actually slow that down a little bit. I'll go to projectile, set it to 4,000 instead of 5,000. That way I can admire it a little bit more. So now we have this like cool little effect. But it is kind of looking a little lackluster when it's actually like hitting an object. So why don't we look at the starter content. And I think blueprints. So there's like a few effects here. It's going to take a second for it to compile that, I think. Whoops. Probably want that a little further up so we can actually see what's happening. So this is like a little blueprint, which is basically a particle emitter, but it's just like a little explosion. So something cool we can try doing is just putting a little explosion at the end of each bolt. So let's go back to blueprints. Also, I forgot, you can actually just search in here to get the exact thing we want. So let's go to the event graph. So we do have these like two endpoints pretty much. So we have like the branch that goes off of like, you know, this conditional here when it hits. But what we wanted to do is add this little explosion at the end of its life. So why don't we look for spawn actor from class. That's what we want. And we can drag, I think this will work. Yep, there it goes. So we have this little module here. Let's say, let's look for, I think, explosion. Blueprint effect explosion. And we'll say transform. So these are like the inputs that we need. So we set like the blueprint, the little effect here. We need to give it a transform, which is like the actual location it'll spawn from. So let's say get actor transform is what we want. So this will just get like the transform at the current point. And let's say, let's see how that goes. There we go. So now we get whenever it dies, we just have a bunch of explosions going on. Very, very exciting. But one thing you'll notice is like on the world there, it's not actually deleting all those instances. So every time it creates a new one, it's just creating a brand new object. So we probably want to get rid of that after a couple seconds. Oh, let's make sure that gets saved. This is going to be, say, destroy actor. Actually, no, we don't want that. We want set lifespan. So we'll drag, so basically we're dragging like the blueprint right, or the explosion right into there, and say after 3 seconds. Actually, what will be better is if we drag out this, or we can right click on this and click on promote the variable. So this will take this value, and instead of making it like this little instance inside the blueprint, we just added this brand new variable. We'll say x lifespan. We'll set that to be, actually, I'll leave that as a float because I think it needs a float. But then we'll set this to public. So this is something we'll actually be able to edit. Actually, let's compile that. So we set that to 3 seconds. So I'll give it enough time to like give it, let it spawn its animation and everything. But this way, when we click on first person projectile, We don't want that. Exit, please. Actually, take that back. I think we need to actually drag an instance of it into there. All right. Didn't quite work the way I thought it would, but no. Oh, I think I need to get rid of that. Yeah, but now you can see like it's actually deleted instances. There we go. This is really fun. I'm having way too much fun with that. So, all right, let's get rid of that. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of that because that's kind of nothing needed. So that's the explosion that was popping off. So we'll use this as an excuse to kind of look at the particle effects emitter. Why is that happening? Because I want to go through and actually change that explosion to being a little bit more, make it like as blue, because like right now it's like actual fire. Kind of probably be a little cooler if it looked like the laser. So let's go into blueprints, blueprint effect explosion. So this is particle emitter. So from here, so this particle emitter is just like, this is another complete editor, but basically it's like just a bunch of little images set up. So they'll just little, you can set them off to like have like be sparks or be fire or something like that. So it's kind of like a neat little effect. What we're looking at is a few layers. So there's like a shockwave, there's a fireball, there's the sparks, there's the light, and then there's the smoke. So I don't know if there's a way we can like, oh, so that's a shockwave itself. So that's like that whole effect, which I'm kind of fine with that color. So let's look at a fireball. So fireball is pretty orange. So let's change, we'll click on color over life. And we'll look at some of the values down here. Constant curve, points. Huh?
There's an option down below. This is
Can be bakeable.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, that's fine. Yeah, I think that's actually not sure. That is not baked in the same terminology as Unity has. So, but from here we can actually just edit the color. So we had this like bluish color, I think. So let's change it to kind of blue. Make it dark blue coming from a light blue. So that's kind of cool. So let's change this. Well, let's change the color over life. Oh, so that's already on the fire itself. So that's already set up a little bit for us. I think I actually want that reversed a little bit. So we want it darker here and lighter up there. And then we'll change it some here. So it's just kind of a few little edits. So let's save that and see how that looks. I think it's still a little bit red in there, but it's got this like little blue explosion effect. It's kind of at this point. So what we have, all we have right now, like we have like stores and stuff. We don't really have like that much. What?
Question. So they were asking
Oh, yes. Wait, that's the mic. All right. Does it sound like?
It's a shooting sound.
All right. Yeah, it is pretty loud. All right. I can see how they're getting annoying. So, all right. So let me know if that fixed stuff.
Yeah, we'll find out in
In a little bit.
Thank you.
So let's take a look at. Actually, one thing we can do, let's go back to, okay, so click on import, no, add new, add feature or content pack. Let's look for those. It is not there. Why is it not there? Okay. So let's go back to the launcher and then let's actually add that animation starter pack. Oh, there we go. So this is our, so this is just like a little collection of animations of character. So he's like already fully animated and everything. But this is actually gives us a good chance to look at persona, which is, this is like what this whole thing is called. But this is like their whole like animation system. Which is like really powerful. So this is like a default like Unreal mannequin that they created. Actually looks a little different from tutorials I was looking at before. But pretty much this is where you can like edit a bunch of things. Like this is, you'll see the skeleton here, which is kind of the root of like all these systems. So this is basically like, you know, if you click on root, you can, does not actually let you see the whole skeleton. But you can see like all the individual bones that make up the character, and that's used to drive the mesh and the animations. So you can see like, so I actually have a couple blends already. Huh? Oh. So this is, so these are like these little green icons here, meaning that's an animation. So these are just like some basic instances, and these are called blend animations. So I don't know if these are 2D or, oh, so these are 2D ones. So a blend and I think there's a bit. I think they're called like blend smears or something. But basically, what they are is it's a collection of animations put along like a set of axes. So like at 0, 0, like basically they're really useful ways to control an animation based on like certain values. So like usually like direction and speed. So for instance, so this this one is designed to work for what direction this actor is moving in, because you'll notice like as I'm moving this dot around, which is, so actually yeah, it is saying like what the speed is here. So it's like as I go lower, it lowers the speed of the animation, goes a little bit faster, and then as I move from like left to right, you'll notice that like their legs start moving around and start walking different directions. It's not super obvious with that, so I'll jog probably be better. So these are kind of cool to put together. I did read that like, I mean, these are like made by Epic Games, who created Unreal, and they did say like these animations are kind of like a little funky in newer versions of Unreal. So it does, because it doesn't look like it's actually like switching from left to right that easily, or unless that's how it's supposed to look. But that's kind of like quick little glimpse. Actually, why don't we just have walk? All right, that's crouch walk. We have just jog. It's a big noise. So, so there is actually like some animation stuff here, which I'll. One thing I kind of want to like work on a little bit real quick is just like some really basic AI, because that would be cool. I mean, just like some very basic AI, and then we'll try and get into animations, and then from there, kind of just like just take questions or let you guys go or something like that. Because it is so about 40 minutes left. So what's the best way to get started on this? So we have this character. Let's make a duplicate of them. So we'll call this AI blueprint. So, or just BP. I don't think we can move. Oh, that's true. It does not like, oh, we can show in folder view. Nope, it does not want that. Show in Explorer, that's what I was looking for. So let's drag this into content. TVJS lesson. There we go. Unknown action crouch. So, so this is a so this is like a third-person controller, basically. So we don't, since we're just making this like an AI character, we actually don't need kind of like any of this. So we could just delete all that. Compile. So there's a few things we'll delete like right away. So we don't want this camera at all. Get rid of character movement. Actually, no. It does not look like we can get rid of character movement. So let's compile, make sure it still works. So why don't we add component Pong Sensing. So this is pretty cool. So let's make sure this compiles. And click on that again. So this is actually a component that handles, this lets this character be able to sense, like, see and hear like other Pongs. So what this, I believe, I'm trying to remember how this works. So I think the blue circle is how the range of its hearing when there's like obstacles around. So if a sound goes off within this sphere, it'll be able to hear it. The yellow sphere is when there's like no obstacles between the sound and, so like if the character is like inside and hears a sound from outside, they won't be able to hear it. But if they're outside, they'll be able to hear in this yellow sphere. And this green circle is the line of sight, basically. So we can actually change this down to 45, let's say. So now that's like, yeah. So this is like actual, like how people actually see, basically. So from here, so like you'll be able to like sneak up on this guy. So we'll compile that, and whoops, don't want that yet. Plop them in there, and you can see like all that stuff's already out there. So let's delete that. Let's hit play. Oh, the mesh is there still, or the collider. Maybe I have to get rid of that. Let's go back. Or maybe I'll, oh wait. There we go. That might. Oh well. Not a big deal. So let's go to event graph. So I'll actually show real quick. Like if you're making a actual AI, Unreal does have this thing called behavior tree. So if you right click look at artificial intelligence, click on behavior tree. And this is kind of like a series of events and functions where you can actually like build this like state machine that'll handle like most interactions with a, just based on like whatever you want. It is pretty, like it is simple once you get it set up, but it takes like a while to get it set up. So for this lesson, we'll kind of just do this like really simple basic AI, because we just want, basically we're just going to have a character like wanders around and chases the player. So let's right click, let's go with AI. Actually, we want Pong Sensing on CPon. So this is AI move to. I want to look for AI move to. So this is basically saying wait, I think this is references. All right, so I think this is how we're setting this up. So basically, this is like an event that says like whenever this object sees another pawn, which can include like basically like from the player character down, it will react in this way. So we're setting this chase sequence up basically. So destination is going to be get player, get first. So this function basically is going to take a bunch of inputs where, so we wanted to hook up the pawn to the pawn. Target actor is self. So this is basically like, this is the AI that's actually going to move, which is, I mean, that's kind of weird to set up, but so destination will get player, get, no, what is it doing? Oh wait, cast to first person. There we go. Cast a first person character. First person character, get actor location. Is this, get player character. I think this is how I did it before, but let's see if this will work. This is kind of the part where we're just going to be experimenting a little bit, I think. Oops. Alright, so let me take a look at the other. Wait, is this it? Yeah. Don't want to save that. Where did AI go? I don't know. Okay, let's not. So, I think there's something I messed up here, which I'm not entirely sure. Oh wait, so on success. Oh, I know what I did. Wait, no, maybe. It's going to say on success possibly might be when it actually is looking for what to do after it moves, but that's not quite correct. So we'll just wait for the other thing to open up so I can take a reference. But actually, while we're waiting for that, let's do on event begin. Wait. Event begin play. So we'll just say AI move to. So we're just going to set up this like little roaming exercise for the character to do. So like we're going to set this up a little bit further on as we're waiting for this thing to open up. But basically, we're going to say like if it's not looking at a character, it's just going to be wandering around all over the place looking for someone. But it's just going to be like random locations. So let's see. Random point navigable. I forgot the most important thing. Let's delete that. Delete these two real quick, let it compile. So the first thing we actually should have done, which is what it tells you every single time when you're doing AI, is we actually need a nav mesh. So nav mesh bounds volume. So what this is it's an actual game object. There we go. So this is a game object that actually sets the boundaries of where the character will move. So pretty much like, the way it's set up now is like the AI doesn't know where to move because we didn't actually set that at all. So we're going to expand this out super big. And it's going to take a second for it to compile, I think. Let's see how this goes. No, it's still... Alright, so I think we're looking at this one. So this is chase state. So I got some of that mixed up, I think. Wait, so what's chase player? Oh, okay, so I see what we did. So I did actually mess up a few things. So we don't actually need their own event. We made I made custom events before, so we'll say custom event chase player. Take a quick glance at that. So this is where we'll actually have that do AI move to. So pawn actually means that's the object to move around. So target actor, whoops. So get reference to self. Oh, dang it, all right. Did a bunch of things out of order. So we actually want some, so we click on, so basically what I did before was I actually set up a custom event instead of like one of the base events that comes with the components of Pong Sensing. So that's like what these stuff down here was. But what we actually need for our purposes is we needed an event that took an input of a player and then basically use that as the data to chase the player around. So click on new parameter input. Let's say object type, or actually let's say pawn. Look for pawn. So then player to chase. So this is what we actually want from the first bit. So the way we're setting this up now is we're just going to be, so we have a player as an input. The pawn is what AI is actually being told to move around. Destination is I don't know how we get to destination yet, but I know what we need to do for that. But then the target actor is basically the reference we send to the AI for like what we want to grab. Actually, no, I take it back. So then target actor is just like the So you could either do like destination or target actor. So destination, basically it's like actual point in the world that you can go to, or you can set a target actor, it'll just find a reference to that. So then, no, get out of that. So we'll go to on success, look for a delay, say delay of 1 second. So it gives us some time to get away. And then say chase player. How did I set it up there? Oh, so it just calls it again. All right. Then we'll do custom event. Let's look for sense player. That went really tiny. I apologize for that. So sense player will say cast to first person character. So this basically will be getting an actual the actual character object. Get player character. There you go. I think that's how I set it up before. Or on C pawn. Okay. So input pawn. Say that. Delete that. So that's just that's like a little bit of, that's a tiny little chain. So let's compile that and see. What do you mean? Target is. Set to, all right, so set this as pawn. Wait, why is this like this? Compile. Oh, I see. I think this got created a little bit out of turn, and that kind of messed up a few things. Maybe that might be what happened. No, all right. So let's see. Nah, it's still there. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna start winding it down a little bit because this is kind of the point where I did have some stuff that doesn't seem to be working in this new instance I'm making. But kind of won't let you guys suffer. Anyway, so I mean, hopefully that was like helpful in some regard to some stuff you can do in Unreal. I can show off like a little bit more of like what you can actually do with like a more proper project. But like I was kind of saying, like at the beginning of the lesson, like, you know, every component of Unreal is like pretty in depth, and you know, to like kind of get something like, so like I think, I don't know, we might do some more lessons later on to like kind of just go into like more specialized areas. Like we could do a whole lesson on just animations alone or something. We are, I guess, I don't know if we should talk about it yet, but like we are kind of looking into covering a little bit more at Unity Orbit, but we'll see how that goes. But I mean, like I said, like I'm still kind of learning a lot of stuff. But I mean, there's a lot of tutorials. So like you actually click on these like little graduation hat there, you can see like there's some tutorials that like walk you through like a lot of this stuff, which I use some of them. I did some Googling online. Like once you start knowing your way around Unreal, like it is pretty easy to start making some like, pretty decent stuff. I mean, like I was saying, the lasers are very cool. We got lasers with explosions in like, 20 minutes. So that's pretty cool. So I can show off like a couple like projects I downloaded to kind of just experiment with stuff. But if like anyone has any other like general questions about Unreal or what, how's it feel coming from Unity or something like that, feel free to ask them. Let's see if I have any of my projects. Actually, I had a couple of assets I downloaded like a while ago, which had some like really interesting effects. Or they kind of took like, shaders and materials and made some like really interesting things with them. It's downloading something. There we go. No one's moving around enough. Yeah. So I could also show off, I want to actually show off like what I was actually working on. So whoops. So this is what the AI is supposed to do when actually is working. Although it's not working as a, what's it doing?
It's very picky.
Yeah. What are you doing? Come back. So this is kind of like, these were the materials that I was having people download, but we ended up not covering that. Actually, I could cover that real quick. I mean, basically, I just like, you just import some materials and stuff and, just apply them to squares. Let's see if old schooler is opening. Oh, there we go. So this is this asset pack, which is it is a paid asset pack. That's one thing that I didn't. I mean, one thing like that's a little bit disadvantage, or one thing Unity has over Unreal is that there's a lot more assets out there that are free to use. Like I think there is some stuff you can download like outside of the actual marketplace, but for the most part, like Unreal 4 was like a paid engine for about like a couple years, and then like I think like 2015, 2014, something like that, they went free. They kind of just actually compete with Unity. That's going to take a bit, I think, to just compile all that. So I mean, there's like a lot of assets out there that are like really, really great, but then they're like these ones were like I think $20 for this. But this is kind of this special effects, which kind of work when the shader doesn't take an hour to load, but that's all right. This is kind of like this little pixelator effect, which is kind of cool. So like it actually takes like a mesh, and they designed this material and shader that you can apply to it that actually changes like how it looks to like make it like more pixelated at runtime, which I mean is really, really cool looking. So it kind of has like these nice little like warped effects, and you can like make stuff pixelated and transparent and look like holograms and stuff. It's like really cool. And this is one. What was it? No, they don't really show it. But this is like this. This is a really cool one where it looks like a VHS tape, which I want to try and do like a project with that. Yeah, like it just applies a HUD to it, but it's like, I mean, it looks really cool. I think these are all by the same people or person. Game app maker, I believe. Yeah. But I mean, they do some like really cool work. So I mean, they're assets I want to try to do something with. But anyway, so I mean, like I say, I hope something came out of this. I hope it at least like got your interest peaked in you know, using Unreal. I mean, it is like pretty easy to get stuff working. It is really easy to get like some nice visual effects up and going. And I mean, you know, I would definitely recommend, you know, look at some tutorials, play with the templates out there, and, you know, kind of just like figure out like, you know, is this something you want to do, and mess around with it. So thanks everyone for coming and sticking around, and see you guys another time. Yeah, next time.
Before we go too far, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. If anyone has questions on Twitch, let me know in like the next Twitch or YouTube.
Yeah, so far space oh, I bought that the pixel shader stuff. So that's not constructive.
Well, we could send a link to them. The asset for this is it's old schooler. I believe you can get it right in the marketplace if you look for it. Old schooler, like that, yeah. So that's like a little $20 thing. But yeah, these guys have some like really cool stuff. I mean, I got from Itch.io, I think, in like a bundle a while ago. So like I don't know if I paid $20 each for them, but they had some like really cool stuff. Oh, this is kind of loaded. So this was kind of, so I mean, it is kind of cooler to see like in person.